What we're going to talk about right now is Carnival Cruise Lines, and is this a good time to get in because we're at around $12 a share? And the question we have is, and the reason why we have this question is because we've seen Carnival Cruise Line over the past few months lose a lot of its share value. And so many people are thinking, well, maybe it's at the bottom. It may be a good time to get in now and try to ride this back up. But there's a reason why it's at $12, right? And do we believe that the reason why it's at $12 makes this a place to where you want to buy, or you want to just try to avoid it altogether? So let's go ahead and get into it, because we can discuss this, because this is going to be really good information for the person that wants an idea of should they get into some of these cruise stocks right now because they've been hammered by coronavirus, or should they wait to see if they're actually going to start returning some of their old share value and try to get in at a later date. So let's get into it. First, let's do some housekeeping. So this is not investment advice. You want to always invest at your own risk. This information is going to be for educational and entertainment purposes only. Okay, so don't take what I say and make it law. You always want to be willing to do your own due diligence and do your own research and kind of understand how a particular situation fits best for your long-term or short-term investment goals. So let's look at Carnival Cruise Lines. So what we're seeing at this graph is that it's lost a lot of its shareholder value, or its share value, over the past few months. Starting around February, it really started to fall. And we're talking about value that it took years for it to get. It settled at around, it was around $8 at one time, I remember. Popped back up a little bit, so around $11.91. But we've seen over the past 2 to 3 months, it lost the majority of its value that it took years to get, right? And there's a specific reason for that. Same thing with Norwegian. You know, the graphs are almost, the charts are almost identical. Lost a lot of its value, starting around 60, started to fall, fell really, really hard and really fast. Late February to early March, really hard and really fast. Settled at one time under $10, came back up, we're around $10.86. Same thing with Royal Caribbean, right? Looking at it, the little higher priced stock around $125 started to fall very, very fast. At one time was under $25. Another company where it took years to get this particular value, and we trying to figure out, you know, will it ever get back around that, or is this just going to be a ticker that's going to trade horizontal for the time being? So we want to understand that coronavirus is the reason why all these particular companies started to lose a lot of their value, right? Because of some of the implications of coronavirus in proximity and cruise ships. And we understand when you're on a cruise ship, you're normally packed out. It's a lot of social gatherings, so you don't have social distancing as a factor. So a lot of the things that were making people come down or contract coronavirus, all the touch points inside the ship, things of that nature, was one of the reasons why shareholders were very skeptical that these particular companies were good places to try to hold their money to get a return, because they had not yet communicated to the market that they had a solution to solve this particular problem, right? And that was the biggest reason why there was such a massive sell-off. Nobody wanted to get stuck holding these stocks because none of these companies were able to communicate to the market that they had a solution to this issue, right? Of visitors or guests on the ship contracting or transmitting or even giving coronavirus to other people. And because they were not able to communicate that and get people confidence in that, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. And one thing we know about uncertainty in the market, for the most part, is it causes people to sell off. So the question we want to ask ourselves is this a good time to buy Carnival stock? So that's the big question. So we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons. So here are going to be some of the pros for Carnival Cruise Line. One of the biggest pros is that, and what I like about this particular company, is that they're running a really good company from the standpoint of that they know how to get business into the door. So we're looking at some of their revenue statements. The revenue continued to go up over the past 3 years. So 17, 18, 20, right? Operating expenses also going up, but a lot of times when you make more money, it costs more money to make that particular money, right? The interest expense is not crazy. And we're starting to look at the income before tax, and we also start to look at the gross profit. Now, what you will want to do is really dig a lot deeper into that balance sheet. But we understand that we're a company that has figured out how to make more money every year, because they really do have a real and a pretty good business going here. Another thing, we want to look at the market. So I always want to look at the market, the scale of the market, the scope of the market, and really how much money is actually in the market. Is the market growing every year? And so from this particular website called Cruise Market Watch, we talk about how in 2018, it was estimated at 45.6 million, which was a 4.6 increase over 2017, with 260 million annualized passengers. That's every year, right? And that also increased 3.3 since 2017. We go a little bit deeper into that. We look at Carnival. So we're looking at their brands. So we got Carnival as a parent company. We got their brands. Carnival Cruise Line is hosting around 22% of the passengers. So we're talking about Carnival parent brand, then their Carnival brand, but they also got Coastal Cruises, Canard, Holland America. They got some other cruise lines, but we look at Princess and Carnival. Princess is doing 6.4% of the market. Coastal Cruises is doing 6%. Carnival's doing 24%. AIDA is doing 4.6%. So Norwegian is doing 8.7% with their Norwegian brand. But we're looking at how Carnival at 22% of passengers, they're getting 8.9% of revenue. Princess with 6.4%, they're getting 9.1%. So Carnival has a really, really good business here where there's a really nice, healthy market. They're able to come in with their different brand categories and take a good piece of that market. So we understand that before all this coronavirus hit, they were running a really good, legitimate business, and there was a lot of revenue flowing through that particular business, right? So another good aspect about Carnival Cruise Lines is they were paying out a dividend. So we're looking at the dividend history starting at 2015, and this is not the total history, this is just what we captured, right? From 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, they always put out that dividend pretty much every quarter. So not only is the share value at one time was continuing to go up, but they're rewarding their shareholders with a dividend. So for you people that only want to look at dividend companies, this was a really good company to look at because at one time they were issuing out a dividend. Now let's get into some of the cons. So Carnival, because of the stress of coronavirus and what it put on their company, they decided to suspend their dividend and stock buybacks. And what you know what I'm saying about dividends is one of the reasons why you may want to hold it is because of the dividend. What the stock buyback does is it decreases the amount of shares in the market, decreases the float. So now your earnings per share starts to go up because your share value essentially increases because there's less shares on the market, right? That's a con. Then we understand that as a result of the stress put on that particular company, because of coronavirus and some of the changes they had to make in the company, they registered for a new offering for $1.25 billion, and I think that changed. So this may have to be corrected because I think that changed to $500 million. But one of the things we're going to do is that's going to dilute shareholders. So what it's going to do is going to start to affect earnings per share because now that you have more shares, the value of a shareholder is going to get diluted, and therefore for Carnival Cruise Line to report a similar earnings per share that they did from a year-to-year standpoint, they now have to perform at a much higher level. But then there's also going to be a stress associated with that because they took on debt to do this. So not only did they do a public offering, they also took on debt, and they also took on debt at a very, very high rate. So they started to put a lot of stress on the company. Now, the biggest stress is this. They're not running any cruises right now. So at the time this particular video is being made, they're supposed to be suspending cruises until around maybe June. But see, this is the challenge. No one really knows when they're going to start cruising again because they don't know when they're going to start cruising again. And even if they start cruising again and they say, hey, we're open for business, if the consumer is not confident in this particular cruise line, then it doesn't matter that you're open for business. So the biggest issue is going to be consumer confidence, and that's what I talked about earlier in this video. These cruise companies having the ability to communicate to the market, not only to shareholders, but to the consumer market, that they have a plan to deal with coronavirus. They have a plan to deal with how coronavirus is transmitted. Now, here's some of the issues. If Carnival Cruise Line says, hey, to make sure we practice social distancing, we're going to cut our capacity by half. Well, what do we know that's going to do? That's going to decrease revenue unless Carnival Cruise Line says, hey, we're going to increase the price of the ticket. So they're very, very challenged now, right? Because of this new era, this new world that we're living in. And how are they going to operate in this post-coronavirus era? But really we're not post because we don't have a solution to this problem in the standpoint of a cure. So you may want to be wary of buying into a particular company that is not driving any revenue. Okay? Or you may feel like, you know what? This stock is so distressed. It's so at the bottom. This is the best time for me to get in because I know eventually this problem is going to get solved because we got too many smart people working on it. And then I would have gotten them on the ground floor and then I can ride it back up. But these are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself before you buy it. Don't just look at the price point because it may stay at that price point for a very, very long time until all of these particular problems get worked out. So this is my little basic analysis. I told you about it before. Make sure you do your own due diligence. Make sure you do your own research. But I wanted to give you my perspective on it and how I looked at it. Fortunately for me, I was able to ride Carnival Cruise Line down on the put with some put options. And I was able to generate a good amount of income off of that. And so it was beneficial for me. And so I may start to observe when I could ride it back up with some call options. But as of right now, I'm going to stay away from it because I don't really see them being able to communicate a plan to start getting their business going again. So if you got any questions, put them in the comments. Hope you got some value from this. This is David Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, and I'll talk to you later.